Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. To consolidate their ruling position, the feudal dynasties of ancient China devised numerous punitive measures, specifically targeting those who did not comply with the system. In the feudal society, the status of women was always very low. Social restrictions and discrimination against women were pervasive, especially in criminal law, where women often faced extremely cruel punishments. As soon as a woman committed a crime, the penalties she faced were often diverse and unimaginable. This was especially true in some remote mountain villages, where local clan leaders would typically create various punishments based on local conditions. These practices were often not bound by law. In these areas, clan leaders could act as judges, deciding who should be punished, how property should be distributed, and even having control over the lives and deaths of others. This rule of man society easily led to inconsistent legal enforcement, causing different places to adopt different legal standards, ultimately resulting in societal fragmentation and incompleteness. According to historical records, there was a punishment that was primarily inflicted on women. This was the pig cage punishment, often seen in Chinese historical films and TV dramas. In fact, it did exist in ancient China. This punishment was generally considered to be a form of private punishment under the ancient clan system, targeting women who were deemed to have violated their wifely duties, depending on the location where it was carried out. This punishment was also known as submerged boat or submerged river. The original purpose of the pig cage was to house pigs. Due to abundant rainfall in the south and poor transportation at the time, many pig farmers would weave a bamboo cage for their pigs when crossing rivers, placing the pigs inside and letting them swim across the river on their own. However, this bamboo cage, originally used for pigs, later became a tool for punishing women. The pig cage punishment involved tying up a person with ropes, stuffing them into a bamboo cage, and then tying the opening of the cage shut with a rope. The entire cage, along with the person inside, would then be suspended and submerged in deep water. After a while, the punisher would raise the cage to check if the person inside was still alive. This process was extremely painful for the victim. With her hands and feet bound, she could not move at all and could only struggle inside the cage. The pressure and suffocation underwater made it nearly impossible to breathe. One can imagine how helpless she must have felt in that situation. Moreover, the use of such extreme measures like the pig cage punishment in ancient society was not only about punishment but also about humiliation and warning. It implied that these women, for committing serious crimes, were no longer worthy of being human and were even denied the possibility of reincarnating as humans. The pig cage punishment is generally believed to have originated during the Ming and Qing dynasties. During the Ming dynasty, China first issued specific regulations regarding women's chastity, and by the Qing dynasty, these regulations were more strictly enforced, with harsher requirements for women's virtue. In that era, the disparity in status between men and women was immense. Once a woman married, no matter the kind of husband she had, she was expected to completely obey him. For women, chastity was considered more important than anything else. As a result, some loyal women, after their husbands died, would prefer to live a life of solitude rather than lose their chastity and strive for the honor of chastity archway, a traditional recognition of women who maintained their chastity after their husband's death. In contrast, some women who violated these moral codes were considered unforgivable. To vent their anger and warn others, adulterous men and women typically faced severe punishment. The man would be publicly beaten to death, while the woman would be thrown into a pig cage and drowned. People around would not express sympathy but would eagerly gather to watch, as if it were an entertaining spectacle. It is worth mentioning that in some ancient Chinese cultures, The method of blood recognition was famously used to confirm whether a child was the biological offspring of the husband. In this practice, after a woman gave birth, her husband's blood and the child's blood would often be dropped into the same bowl to verify the child's paternity. If the bloods did not mix, the child was considered not to be the husband's biological child, and the woman could be accused of infidelity, often facing harsh punishments like being subjected to the pig cage, a form of cruel execution. However, modern science has proven that blood recognition has no scientific basis and cannot accurately determine the biological father of a child. As a result, many innocent women throughout history suffered severe consequences due to this unscientific method, even though they had not committed any wrongdoings. According to media reports, in November 2012, several diving enthusiasts, while training in the Green Cave Pool, Ulfkutan, in Yanfian Village, Longwan Township, Maisian District, Meizhou City, Guangdong Province, accidentally discovered a large number of neatly arranged corpses. The discovery was shocking, with some bodies even being bound, and the manner of death was so brutal that it sent chills down the spine. The divers were frightened and quickly fled the pool. After reaching shore, they immediately contacted the relevant authorities of the Green Cave Pool to report their terrifying discovery. The local government acted swiftly, contacting archaeological experts and the police to investigate. Upon arriving at the scene, the archaeologists and police instructed the divers to recover the remains from the water and bring them to the laboratory for further examination. During the retrieval process, divers also found earth-packed structures used for securing iron chains, but no signs of a traditional burial. Clearly, these bodies had not undergone proper burial rituals. Further research and analysis by experts soon revealed that all the remains were female, mostly around 20 years old. This discovery raised more questions. Why did these young women die at the peak of their youth? What had they gone through? To solve this mystery, the archaeologists decided to visit the village where the Green Cave Pool was located to learn more about the local history and background. After more than a month of in-depth investigation, they finally found a lead from 86-year-old Mrs. Lee in the village. Upon hearing that experts were investigating the origin of the remains, Mrs. Lee approached them and claimed to know something, recounting an old story from many years ago. Mrs. Lee explained that there had once been a wealthy family with the surname Lee living in the area, with their ancestral temple located nearby. The female remains in the Green Cave Pool originally belonged to this family. Mrs. Lee recalled that many young women had died prematurely, and one of the reasons was that they secretly met with men during their youth and were caught by the family elders. To protect the family's reputation, they were subjected to the cruel pig cage punishment. Mrs. Lee further explained that in ancient feudal society, chastity was regarded as a virtue more important than life itself, especially for young women in wealthy families. If a young woman secretly engaged with a man, it was not only considered a disgrace to the family but also a challenge to social norms. These lost virgins would not only bring shame to their families but also become regarded as useless in society. As a result, many of them were sentenced by family heads to undergo the extreme punishment of pig cage. After hearing Mrs. Lee's account, the archaeologists and everyone present were shocked. These young girls had suffered such a tragic fate because of their family's cruel rules. One could say that this family, in order to preserve their so-called family honor, had resorted to such extreme and cold-blooded private punishments that these young women died long before their time, in the bloom of youth. According to some historians, these brutal practices in history serve as a reminder that both historical cultures and ancient customs could cause immense harm to innocent people. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.